Hi and welcome to the video. I'm Damon, this is Dame Over, and today's Battlefield 5 video is all about the newest Tides of War chapter update, Trial by Fire, and this update is also being called the Firestorm update, thanks to it coming out in only 3 more days, which is very, very exciting. So there have, as always, been a bunch of tweaks, balances, and changes implemented to improve the game. I'll talk you through all of the important ones, good or bad, so you know everything you need to know in the latest version of Battlefield 5. So there's been a very heavy focus on vehicles for this update, and in particular for planes. Now, I'll give you an overview of what those changes are, as there are so many very small changes that add up to larger ones. It would take me forever to talk you through all of them. But if vehicles are your thing, then please check out the patch notes yourself, which I've linked in the description so you can get all of those details. So the idea behind these patches is that the better and higher skill pilots will be able to benefit more as the skill ceiling has been raised a bit. And the idea for flying in Battlefield 5 was that it would be more accessible for newer players, but had enough nuances and difficulty to it that veteran pilots would still be able to do better owing to their higher skill and that experience. This essentially was not happening and was not good enough and was resulting in dogfights becoming very boring and very uneventful. Now, I'm not a vehicle player at all in Battlefield games, and especially not as a pilot, so understanding how this changes things is going to go way over my head. So if you are an experienced pilot, or at least competent at it, I'd like to know what you think about the changes and how that might affect the behaviour and the use of planes. But so far, what I can gather from the community and all those posts on the forums and on Twitter and on Reddit and stuff is that there was a lack of balance between the planes and their weapons, and that's what needed addressing. But instead, what DICE have chosen to do is ignore what people have asked for and implement big changes to the mechanics and the behaviour of planes overall, just to do with how you fly them. And this is one of the fair few strange decisions I've seen made with this patch, more of which you'll hear about a bit later. So flying in general has changed in a few ways, the most important of which are to do with changing speed and direction. There have been a few tweaks being put in place to give pilots more to think about when they want to change speed. So the drag coefficient and the effect of gravity on all the planes has been adjusted in several ways. Planes will no longer slow down as fast just by reducing the throttle, and they will accelerate faster in a dive, so you'll have to consider using gravity and its effect on your plane way more with your maneuvers. And there's also been a reduction to maneuverability at slower speeds, with the idea being that those pilots that are better at controlling planes will be able to outmaneuver their opponents because of a higher level of control at higher speeds. Stalling has also been given a more realistic feel too, with the nose dropping much faster if you do stall. There have been some adjustments to plane weapons. So there's been new damage curves that have been implemented for all large and medium bombs. These curves now give more predictable damage levels depending on the proximity to the target. This change affects both armor and infantry targets. Additionally, some direct hit damage present on some bombs has been moved to the explosion damage in order to achieve better damage consistency. Now, I'm reading the patch notes verbatim. That doesn't make any sense to me. The patch notes notoriously don't really make that much sense if you read them aloud, so hopefully that makes sense to someone. There's also the 75mm and the 6-pounder cannons on airplanes have had their explosive damage reduced to approximately equal the effectiveness of the BK-37 Stuka in damage per second. The maximum explosive radius of the GR-21 rockets has been slightly reduced to better balance them against the RP-3 rockets. The small bombs equipped on the BF-109G2 can now be dropped together to allow both bombs to land closer to their target, and that should enhance their effectiveness against infantry and make them a good choice against the GR-21 rockets for that skill tree. The 4,000-pound blockbuster bomb has had a significant reduction in blast damage, but retains its blast radius. Additionally, the bomb has had significant drag increased, making it slower to reach the ground. The idea being that this bomb was an area of effect weapon designed to devastate a large amount of structures, vehicles, and infantry. So to balance it, it's mostly been reduced to not kill things. That's what I can get from this. So as far as I can tell, the biggest and most powerful bomb will now not kill very many targets, but do a lot of damage instead. I mean, like I said before, I don't fly planes, but I don't really understand this. So it's like a huge explosive tickle? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me at all. So if you know how to use the 4,000-pound bomb and how that might affect it, I'd really like to know what you think about it. The 250-pound bombs on the Spitfire VA can now also be dropped together for a similarly greater effect on the target, and these bombs have also received a slight boost to their blast damage against infantry, as previously a single bomb was unable to kill a full health soldier in a reliable manner. I mean, And again, like I said, I'm not a pilot or vehicle user in Battlefield 5, so how these changes will affect things in practice is pretty hard for me to say, but as far as I understood, the problems were only ever really about weapon balance in planes. So true to form, we've been given an update that has almost nothing to do with that. Now, I'm very interested to know how this does affect things, so please do let me know if you are a frequent flyer. Next up, we've got more vehicle changes, the most significant being that the grenade throw animation has been fixed when you're riding in a vehicle so you actually see it, and you can now fire the rocket launchers when in a vehicle too. A pretty cool addition, I think, but honestly, this patch note is it's really dumb. I mean, it's just so unclear. I've never seen the Pia and Panzerfaust being referred to as the rocket launchers, and it raises the question, for me at least, whether this includes the grenade pistol too. So some clarity on this would be very welcome, DICE, or if any of you guys know anything about it, that'd be great. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's yet again confused about the wording in the patch notes. So next up, we've got weapon, gadget, and specialization changes. So the Pia has been adjusted for new tank values. It now has the proper blast damage for infantry kills, but has overall a slightly reduced damage. This is again another really confusing patch note. I stared at it for about 5 minutes before I gave up trying to decipher its clearly hidden and mysterious meaning. But what I can take from it is that the Pia now does less damage to tanks and is still the same against infantry, but honestly I can't tell you that for certain because it just makes no sense when you read it. The AP mine has finally had a nerf, and I had a really good time using the AP mines for a day or so when it was pretty funny to be randomly picking up kills, but in every game type AP mines were littering the map, so it quickly became a problem just because it was so easy to use them and get extra kills. And with so many potential mines being put down in so many random spots, it was pretty ridiculous to be honest. With only Assault class unable to use them, it definitely needed addressing. You can still carry 2 and place 2 mines very close to each other, which will bag you a kill, but if you come up against just the one mine, it won't kill you from full health. The damage that explosives like mines and dynamite don't instantly destroy parts that have been upgraded via the specialization tree, which I think is a fair enough change. If you've chosen to reinforce parts of a vehicle that still get rinsed by explosives anyway, there's not really much point in using it, so hopefully that will not be happening anymore. They've now added in a new AT mine and dynamite damage curve, so mines and dynamite do very good damage if they're stuck to or triggered by a vehicle, but the damage drop-off is very rapid if they're detonated only nearby. This also makes the lethality against infantry good only at very close ranges apparently, and it will reduce that to a large wounding radius if they're not basically right on top of it. Now, I've got a couple of issues with this one. I can see the reasoning behind it, but I haven't once seen a complaint about mines and dynamite, so it's a bit of a surprise, to be honest. Getting close enough to throw AT mines and shoot them is a tough enough prospect at best anyway, so not being rewarded for it seems pretty strange to me. And as far as sticky dynamite goes, I'd understand it if the mechanics worked properly, but there is a huge lack of consistency in what dynamite actually sticks to. The amount of times I've managed to sneak up behind a tank and just watch it bounce off instead of actually attaching is stupid. I would have hoped the efforts would have been made in fixing the consistency issues rather than nerfing something that doesn't even work properly. I mean, how are DICE supposed to know how powerful it is if it isn't working in the way it's intended to in the first place? You'll still be able to take infantry out relatively easily though, but you'll have to be a bit more accurate with your throws. There's also been an issue fixed where weapons would not gain full accuracy quickly enough when you're zooming in and not using iron sights. So for those of you guys that were struggling to line up your first few shots when using a scope, this should see an improvement to making that a little bit easier. And the FG42 has had a small buff by having the horizontal recoil being reduced. This is to account for the small magazine size apparently, and I love the FG42. It's very, very powerful, and from my experience it was already a pretty beastly gun, so I will definitely be returning to it and seeing how this affects it. The Gewehr 1-5 has also had a slight buff with a reduction in the reload speed, so it now matches the animation. And here is what I think is the most important change to come with this patch, and it's that the all-powerful semi-autos have had a nerf. They now have more and longer felt recoil, whatever that means. The specifics are annoyingly avoided in this patch note, but basically they will be harder to control. Semi-autos have been the most dominant weapon type in Battlefield 5 since launch, thanks to their easy-to-use nature, their effective range, the size of the maps, and how well they suit pairing them with a scope. So this could upset the balance between lots of other weapons. Hopefully this results in seeing a bigger variety of weapons on the battlefield and steers players more towards other classes than just the Assault class. and this has been the main reason the recon class is so underused in my opinion, because of the semi-autos. And this is speaking just for console players. It's been far too easy to counter a sniper with a semi-auto up to this point, so hopefully we see more people going for the recon class in particular. There has also been a buff to the polished action specialization for those of you guys who like to opt for strong hip-fire weapons. It has a stronger effect on the first shots, so you guys running the medic class will be able to compete more effectively at close range. And I don't think there are any more significant enough improvements that I feel it's worth talking to you guys through for the rest of the patch, apart from one that has, quite frankly, really pissed me off. As you might have been able to tell, I'm not that best pleased with these patches, and it's mostly because of this. So, right at the bottom of the patch notes, there is a note for both Xbox One and PS4 that reads this: made previously implemented vault activation improvements to work on 30Hz servers. Now, this might seem a bit annoying to start with, as the largest game types, if you guys don't know, like Conquest, Ground Operations, and Frontlines, only run at 30Hz. So the movement improvements that were such a big part of the patches last month, and were made such a big deal of, have only just been implemented in the game types that most players play, and that's just for people that play on console. So I was curious about this because of the rage I mentioned earlier, and I checked it out for myself. And as it turns out, on Xbox One, and I think it's safe to assume from this patch note, and please correct me if I'm wrong, on PS4 too, every single game type runs at a tick rate of 30Hz. Yep, I was very surprised. Every single game type, which means that the patches and improvements for one of the biggest issues in Battlefield 5 that we've been struggling with since launch, one that was made a big deal out of when the fixes were finally getting implemented, and that was rolled out to PC players, didn't apply at all to console players. Now, I don't think there's really much more to say about it, because the reasons for being annoyed at this are so very obvious, but I mean, they've done it again. Way to alienate your player base, DICE. I mean, if that was your intention, you've done an incredibly good job. I know I don't want to finish this negatively, but hey-ho, it's Battlefield 5, so the expectation for happiness has been pretty low up until this point, but there have been some other additions to the patch that were entirely left out of the patch notes, or they're just really big bugs. So anyway, so it looks like instead of just having your health bar at the bottom turning yellow, they've implemented the entire screen going yellow when you're healing. I guess this is to make it clear that you are actually healing, but it just makes visibility even worse, and as we all know, visibility is still not great in Battlefield 5. I thought it was a bug, to be honest, and it looks like it's actually on purpose because it seems to be happening to everybody. Hopefully it is just a big bug that has rolled out to lots of people accidentally, and it does get changed. If this has been implemented on purpose, then I'm incredibly confused. I haven't seen anyone complain about this at all, and I would have thought the health bar turning yellow was enough of an indicator, but again, if it is on purpose, apparently not, according to the DICE team. And there's also been the diving and surfacing buttons. They have either bugged or been changed, so instead of pressing the crouch button to dive and then pressing it again to surface, you sometimes have to press a different button for each action. So pressing the crouch is still dive, but if you want to avoid drowning, you now have to press the jump button. This wasn't working consistently, so it's really difficult to tell if it was on purpose or it was a bug. Sometimes pressing the crouch button again did let me surface, but it was only after much yelling and mashing of the crouch button. The only way diving and surfacing did work consistently was if I used the jump button to get that sweet, sweet oxygen back in my lungs. If this is on purpose, again, I just can't understand why it's been changed, and especially if it's been left out of the patch notes. So again, fingers crossed this is just a bug. And to top things off, you can now no longer reload cancel or switch weapon mid-reload, entirely nullifying the point of having a sidearm. You now have to wait for your primary weapon to fully reload before you can change to your pistol. I'm sorry, I find this so funny. At which point, if you've managed to stay alive, you might as well just use your primary weapon again. I'm also hoping this is a bug too, because it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I was playing a lot of Battlefield 5 yesterday to test out this new patch, and it looks like the netcode has again been very, very affected by another patch. These super bullets that are killing you around corners are happening far more frequently than I ever remember it happening, and it's just, quite frankly, it's not good enough. The netcode doesn't seem to have been addressed at all. We get random stability fixes getting put in, but they don't specify what they are. It seems like DICE are avoiding tackling the netcode because it would be a pretty costly and time-consuming thing to do, but it's the quality of the game that it's affecting. It's just, frankly, not good enough if you're being shot around corners after you've escaped someone, or you can't see the person that has shot you because, again, they're around a corner. It just makes no sense that this issue hasn't been addressed and they haven't chucked everything they have at fixing it. But anyway, some of these patches do look like they're going to change the game in a positive way. Unfortunately, there's some new bugs and some random changes that don't make any sense have been put in, but again, it's Battlefield 5, so it is in a far better state than it used to be. At this point, I would have been happy if it was released. It's just a shame it's taken up until now. But with Firestorm literally just a few days around the corner, I'm very, very excited to be getting way more hours in. And as soon as Firestorm does come out, I'm going to be getting some footage out to you guys, some gameplay, and possibly a couple of live streams as well. So that's everything you need to know about the latest patch to Battlefield 5. Here's a very quick thank you to my Dame operatives, those of you guys supporting the channel through Patreon. It's because of you guys I'm able to make content as often as I do. If you want to become a Dame operative yourself, there's a link in the description and the pinned comment to the Patreon page. If you had a good time, make sure you hit the like button. If you're new around here, hit that sub button too. Don't forget the bell button for notifications so you don't miss any future posts. And as always, share this video absolutely wherever you like. And until next time, that's Dame over. Peace.